92.5 FM and also online at mykcr.org.
Hi, I'm Steve Thomas for Habitat for Humanity Restore. Habitat Restores are nonprofit home improvement stores and donation centers that sell new and gently used furniture, building materials, and appliances to the public at a fraction of the retail cost. The Ulster County Restore at 406 Route 28 in Kingston needs your donations. Call our hotline at 845-853-7499 to schedule your free pickup. And thanks.
We all play a role in keeping our community safe.
Every day, we move in and out of each other's busy lives.
It's easy to take for granted all the little moments that make up our everyday.
Some are good,
Others not so much.
But that's life.
It's when something doesn't seem quite right
that it's time to pay attention.
Because only you know what's not supposed to be in your everyday.
So protect your everyday.
If you see something suspicious, say something to local authorities.
Hi, this is Jared Mans from the Spring Lake Fire Department, and I support Kingston Community Radio, and so should you.
This programming is brought to you by the Friends of Kevin Cahill. As a strong advocate of local broadcasting, Assemblymember Cahill urges you to support Kingston Community Radio with your time and donations. Your contributions keep KCR vital and on the air at FM 92.5, AM 920, and on the web at mykcr.org. Please join Assemblymember Cahill and send your gifts of $10, $25, or more to Kingston Community Radio, Post Office Box 4364, Kingston, New York 12402. Together, let's keep KCR alive.
Thank you, Ken.
All right, good morning. Good morning, all Kingston. Those of you who are awake, we're here today at Kingston Community Radio. Hugh Reynolds, Mario Catalano, and our special guest, former county judge, former district attorney, Don Williams.
Most proud of being former point guard for the Kingston High School.
And former point guard for the Kingston High School.
And Kingston Community Radio Thursday co-host.
And, yes, co-host on Thursday where he gets to ask questions. Today he gets to answer them. So this is a little reversal of roles here, Don.
Much more comfortable position for me to answer questions rather than asking them. That's a real art.
Oh yeah,
I'm
asking them is not easy.
No, it's
not easy. You want to get to the heart of the matter. So, you why don't you start as the former political editor of the?
Everybody's a former. You're the only person working anymore.
Well, somebody's got to pay down the national debt.
Thank you for doing that.
Considering, boys, please, the banter. Considering we have one of an esteemed former jurist in our community, I'd like to open with a story in today's Daily Freeman.
Good morning, Hugh. Nice to see you this morning.
You too, Donnie. Thank you.
Oh, please.
Wait a minute. Excuse me, Judge.
Call me Don, Donald. I've been called many.
My middle name is Donald, and I've been called Donnie. Yeah, Hugh D.
I will stop calling you Huey.
Now get this. Okay. Get this. I think about a month ago, the Common Council, with one exception, sent the mayor a letter, a communication, to do something about gun violence in Kingston.
That's a great thing. Kingston's Common Council.
Kingston's Common Council, yeah. And there wasn't much of a reaction from the mayor other than to wring his hands and say there's a lot of violence in Midtown. Anyway, the Midtown older woman, Rita Worthington, has come up with a proposal to deal with gun violence in Kingston. She suggests that lawmakers invest $20,000 in a community outreach program to get guns off the streets and out of people's homes. It's called. Yeah, I can't make this up. The program is called.
You don't agree with the concept of?
No, I like the concept. I mean, I'm not. I don't have a gun. I don't know why I need one. But it's called SNUG. Another acronym, and SNUG actually spells guns backwards. Don's jaw just dropped open. But they're modeling this thing, and I'll open it up for discussion for you two fellas. Worthington is modeling this program after a similar program in Chicago. The floor is yours, gentlemen.
Well, I think it's very worthwhile.
Chicago is
to model
it's a toddling town.
to model a program after a program in the city with the highest death rate from gun violence. And it's obviously failed there, but I think we should export it to Kingston, where only yesterday it was reported in the paper that 2 people were stabbed in Midtown. So maybe we should combine it with knife violence.
Guns and knives.
Because, see, the problem is not gun violence. The problem is gun people and violent people. And so if you take the guns away from violent people, which you're not going to be able to do, you have to take their knives, you have to take their baseball bats, you have to take their tire irons, you have to take everything that they could possibly use because they're violent people.
So we take the people out of do we take the people out of Midtown? Is that the plan?
Well, I don't think
violent people in jail.
Can we hear from our guest, please?
I don't think it's only Midtown. However, there is a real crisis in Midtown, has been for quite some time. What exactly is the concept itself that we're obviously patterning anything after a program in Chicago, which has been a disaster in trying to address violence, black on black violence?
Yeah, for the most part, yeah.
For the most part, gun violence, it's a disaster. That's troubling. However, what is exactly the concept? What is the plan that they hope to do to succeed in reducing violence, especially in the Midtown area? What is the plan that they hope to do?
Well, Judge, you saw a lot of this from the bench. People, thousands perhaps.
40 years.
Yeah, and then as district attorney, you can speak to those things now that you're off the bench. What's your sense of it? What can be done?
Well, it cannot be any one area. And it's something we've been preaching, Hugh, forever, from being a young assistant under Mike Kavanaugh to being DA to being a judge. The first thing is, number one, you must put out a deterrent for the carrying of illegal weapons. The law that already exists on the book is stiff for individuals that possess handguns illegally. It's stiff. Take a look at some of the prosecutions and then the sentences that I gave to individuals who had guns illegally, who brandished weapons in public, who linked guns and gangs or guns and drugs. They received fair hearings. They received fair trials. If they were convicted, they were slammed. Now, each case was looked at individually, the age of the individual, prior criminal history, both in family court, where violence occurs, and also as an adult, the chance of individuals coming back to a community successfully after release, the support groups they have. So initially, the criminal justice field and judges have to take what can be an unpopular and tough position. And Hugh, I can tell you, ask some of the police officers in Kingston about when I was on the bench. They feared me, they respected me, because when they came into my court, whether you're a cop or a lawyer, whether you're a prosecutor or a defense attorney, you better come in prepared and you better be honest. It didn't matter who you were. Defendants received fair trials, but the police knew, and the community knew, and the defendants that were living in this community knew that if they would get fair trials. If they were convicted, they were going to get hit with heavy sentences, up to 15 years for the simple possession of a loaded handgun illegally. And Young people got stiff sentences. Older people got stiff sentences. Men received stiff sentences. Women, whites, blacks, Asians. Some people got breaks because there were serious circumstances that mitigated what they did. The Kingston Police Department guys, the state police would tell me, the people at the sheriff's office, every telephone call that an inmate has, whether it's prior to conviction or after conviction or after acquittal, it's recorded. And they're told it's recorded. The guys from the sheriff's office occasionally would come into my chambers to play back for me some of those recordings. Sometimes they were used in prosecutions by the DA. The word was out to other gang members in Dutchess County, in Orange County, in the Bronx, in parts of Brooklyn. I'm not going to give you exactly how they referred to me. It wasn't Donnie.
Good thing, you'd really slam him.
So I say it was Judge MFer.
Whoa.
But they said, don't be coming up here selling drugs or bringing guns because this guy will. So,
Judge, what you're saying is that we call firm, stiff justice, as it were, is a deterrent.
The law exists. It's got to be prosecuted, and a judge has to be willing to be unpopular, run the risk of a reputation that is not necessarily flowery, and invoke stiff sentences to send a message. Not just one part. That's not going to resolve it. I think the more important part is, and you're hearing from a person who, as you know, has been kind of hard charging as a prosecutor and a judge. More important is somehow we have to get the word out to young kids who come from broken families that do not have guidance in their families. Teach them the ills of gangs. Give them something. Give them some, I don't want to say programs, give them some goal, some objective in life to keep them out of those areas. And it's sad. There's so many stories that I saw both as a DA and as a judge, Hugh, where these kids are bright. These young kids, 16, 17, 18, 19, they're bright. They have no guidance. And when we are not there to give them something to direct them away from this type of activity, it's going to occur. So it certainly is not just law enforcement. It's not just legislation. There really has to be a community approach to it. Now, from what you told me, I'm sorry, Mario, but from what you told me, Hugh, earlier, the theory of this concept is to have volunteers go knock on doors in the community to get guns off the street? If that is indeed the plan, oh my God, wake up and smell the coffee. You can't send an untrained individual into a potentially violent area and have them knock on a door to get the gun out. It has to be
more to it than this. Yeah.
I think they're going to train them, but I'm not sure how.
Train them to do what?
So the article is a little short on details.
Rita Worthington is the one that I know. I worked, if that's her husband was Paul Worthington, who was a reverend. I think Paul passed. I worked closely with Paul Worthington and many other leaders of the African American community, Charles Medeli and Evelyn Clark, Al Costin, to try to reach out when I was DA. Couldn't do it as judge. You were not permitted to some respect. But she's a good lady.
I just want to remind the audience that we're here this morning with Don Williams, our former DA, our former county judge. Anyone with a question, anyone like to discuss this subject, anyone has additional information that on this program that wasn't available in the newspaper, may call 331-9255. We'd love to hear from you. Again, 331-9255, Kingston Community Radio, for a conversation with Don Williams.
And what may be refreshing, what may not be refreshing to some people is that it's been 40 years where I've had my hands cuffed behind my back, where I've never been permitted to really say anything. Worked closely as an assistant DA with the community, could do that. As a judge, you really cannot ethically say anything.
Yeah.
So now, fire away. I'd be more than happy to express my opinions, which does not mean they're right, but they're reasoned opinions based upon experience, because I've seen it all for 40 years.
I like the fire. I'm wondering about the recently passed quote unquote bail reform law, and how that you perceive that affecting these issues. So, is that going to help reduce gun violence? Is it going to perhaps increase gun violence? Are you neutral on it? Well, how do you feel about that whole situation? I mean, I know it's a pretty complex law,
yes,
but
it would take forever to give a full. I'll narrow it as much as I can. Bail reform, a type of bail reform had to happen. It had to happen because of the fact that there were many individuals who could not afford bail, nominal bail of $100 to $250 on misdemeanors, low-level crimes, violations, such as disorderly conducts, and they languished in jail until cases could be brought up from the town and city court in front of me, where I then would review bail hearings. So bail reform had to occur. It's not right that people that have lesser financial positions should be languishing in jail simply because they cannot make bail. But don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, much like they did with the Rockefeller drug reform. Bail reform, as it existed, it's been modified to some respect, but as it still exists, was done for legislative, personal, political reasons. It was popular. The marketing of bail reform was tremendous, and what they did was a disaster. You have to remember that the way the law states, bail cannot be used by a judge as a punitive measure. Bail, under the law, if a judge follows his or her oath, bail can only be set to ensure the attendance of person charged with a crime at future appearances. You cannot directly state, even under the new bail reform, you cannot state, I'm setting a high bail because of public safety. It's illegal, it's unethical to do that. Now, let's be candid. The criteria you're allowed to use for bail fits that mold. For example, it's really what is the risk that the person will flee the jurisdiction. If they're a great risk, you can set high bail. What do you consider when determining whether somebody's a flight risk? You can consider how serious the crime is, because the more serious the crime is, the sentence goes up. The higher the sentence is, the more risk the person's going to take off. You consider prior criminal history. You consider whether or not that individual has violated an order of protection. So all of this other criteria that a judge is permitted to use in determining what the bail should be set, it also falls under the category of public safety. So although you're not allowed to say, I'm setting a high bail because I have to keep the community safe, you are in essence also doing that. It's ensuring that.
Wait a minute, didn't you just say that public safety is not a consideration?
You're not permitted to consider public safety, period. That is not one of the...
I didn't hear you right then.
You are not permitted to consider public safety. The only thing you're permitted, the only criteria for bail is to ensure the attendance of the defendant. If you were to go on the record and say you allegedly murdered 4 people, the proof of it is great, and you are therefore a threat to the community until this can be resolved, you would be removed from the bench. What you can say and do is, you have a lengthy criminal history. You have failed to show on other cases. That demonstrates flight risk. You are facing a murder charge, which could be the remainder of your natural life. You have a motivation to flee. You can say you have assaulted others on other occasions. You can go through a list that deals logically with a flight risk that also bears upon public safety. But you cannot consider public...
say
it's not just say it, it's unethical to consider it. And to me, that's a disaster. You are presumed to be innocent. Definitely. And bail is simply to ensure the attendance of the defendant, but you should be able to also consider as one of the myriad criteria public safety. You're not. It is unethical to do that. And that's disturbing. So I hope that answered part of your question.
No, I think that was a great answer. And again, folks, Kingston Community Radio, you're here with Don Williams, former county judge, former DA. We're talking criminal justice. The phone number, 331-9255. We'd love to hear from you. If you have any questions, just call in.
Judge, your successor, Dave Clegg, has been...
He's the district attorney.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. No, Dave Clegg.
Brian Rounds. Brian Rounds has been on the bench now for over a year. Would you care to assess what you've seen?
Would I care to? Yes. Would it be...
could you briefly...
Without Mr. Rounds here? No.
All right.
Suffice it to say, there has not been one... And you know Mr. Rounds well. He is brilliant. He's brilliant. He was a fine, fine trial lawyer, appeared in front of me. My concerns are there has not been one jury trial.
Well, you had the pandemic last year.
January, February, March, there was no pandemic.
They just reported one yesterday.
Okay, so it's been a year.
Not by Judge Rounds.
Oh, okay. Okay.
There has not been one jury trial. The pandemic has left.
More or less.
Courts are open. I'm concerned that defendants are not getting their right to a jury trial. I'm concerned that the community and victims are not getting a speedy resolution of their cases. That's a concern.
But isn't the system pretty much designed, and this might be a little cynical on my part, pretty much designed to avoid jury trials, to plea bargain on every case possible?
Well, let me put it this way, Hugh. Plea bargaining is a necessary evil, and I do believe it's an evil. I do. Because individuals will plead guilty for a particular crime or to receive a particular sentence because they fear if they're convicted, their sentence will be greater. So they may be pleading guilty, especially at the recommendations of their attorneys who do not want to try cases. They may be pleading guilty to offenses perhaps they did not commit, or at least not commit the level of offense because they simply fear facing lengthier. You don't plead guilty unless something's being offered. The DA will offer. The DA has the power to offer basically anything they want. The judge has very little power unless there's an indictment. And again, there are exceptions for everything I tell you. But a DA, when somebody's charged with a murder, the DA has a right to reduce it to a violation. In essence, yeah. Sure. They can do whatever they want, and it happens. There are over 2,000 felonies that occur every year in Ulster County. 2,000 felonies. Felonies are the highest level of crime. There are about 5,000 crimes, about 2,000 felonies. Felonies range from burglaries to child abuse, sexual abuse, murder, rape.
Felonies.
Large larcenies, large amount of larcenies. They're felonies. They're serious crimes. You face significant sentences. Out of the roughly 2,000 felonies charged a year, and I'm going back to the time that I was DA, it's probably increased. Out of the 2,000, the DA typically selects about 200 to 300 cases that are prosecuted as felonies. So all of the other cases are being reduced as misdemeanors. No one knows that. I'm sure you are involved deeply in politics, the criminal justice system. You reported this stuff forever.
I didn't
no
know
one
that.
knows. All you have to do is look up the Division of Criminal Justice statistics. There are close to 2,000 felonies a year, and as a judge, when I was DA, we prosecuted more cases by indictment than even Mike Kavanaugh did. But it still was only 300 to 500 cases a year. When I took the bench and Mr. Carnwright was DA, the number of cases that they chose to bring in front of me, minimal, maybe 200. And each year it would be different, maybe 150. And what happens is the distinction on how a DA plea bargains a case is if it's a felony and if the DA chooses to prosecute it as a felony, the defendant has a right to have the case go to the grand jury. Except if the DA and defense counsel sit together and say, hey, let's work this out before Williams gets to hear it, the defendant can give that right up. It's called waiving your right to go to the grand jury, and you can now plead guilty to a much lesser felony by a superior court information. Judge has no say. If the two of them cannot work that plea, the judge can determine the sentence, but the DA and the defense attorney are determining the level of crime, the charge. And the level of crime handcuffs the judge for what the judge can or cannot do. If the DA indicts it, meaning if the defendant and the DA cannot work out a plea bargain on a felony, and they go to the grand jury and it's indicted by the 23 people that meet in secret, then the DA may want to reduce it. They can't reduce it without the judge's consent, and I routinely would refuse the requests of the former district attorney to reduce his indictments, which meant then two things were occurring. To circumvent that tough policy, more cases were resolved by superior court informations, where the defense attorney and the prosecutor worked together to circumvent the judge's discretion, or the cases were just sent back as misdemeanors to a town or city court. So there is a wealth of information that people just don't know, and a judge can't go out and do that. And a DA who has to run for office every 4 years, it's not likely that DAs are going to go out and tell the public how great they are at plea bargaining.
Hey, on a similar, not a similar subject, but what's your take, Judge, on the current effort to increase the number of Supreme Court judges?
You know, it's something I'd like to study that further. First of all, if you talk about anything in criminal justice in New York State, I will give you answers that are completely honest, maybe unpopular.
All right, let me back that up then.
If
you're not going to comment on it, let it go.
No, I will. It's a political disaster.
From time to time, there's a local discussion about increasing the number of judges in Ulster County. Now, you sat on the bench. What do you think?
We've needed an extra county court
judge, right?
Forever. When I took over, Hugh, and you have to realize that the work as a judge is just as a work as a DA. It's what you make out of it. You can sit back and basically make a lot of money, have a tough job, but make a lot of money and have a pretty damn easy life. It's how you approach it as district attorney or judge. When I took over as judge, which was, I forget, in 2010, there's something called standard and goal. So out of the roughly 200 to 300 cases that appear in a felony court, there's only one county court judge. Out of the 200 to 300 that the DA decides to put in front of the county court judge, there's something the Office of Court Administration has selected this artificial date, but there's some basis for it, that's called standard and goals, which means judges, especially in criminal cases, should resolve the case by either plea or trial within 6 months from the time the case is not charged down below, but when it's brought in front of you by either indictment or superior court information. It should be 6 months. That's a reasonable period of time to get all the lawyers together that love to stall and get the case resolved. When I took over, we were 55 cases behind standard and goals. So you have your regular calendar, which would be 200 to 300 cases a year, and there were 55 cases on top of that. The Office of Court Administration wanted to send visiting judges to Ulster County, and I wasn't terribly popular with the first administrative judge. I can't tell them what to do, but I told them how I felt, and I said, I don't want a visiting judge here. The people in Ulster County voted for me, hopefully because of how I approached criminal justice. They have a right to have me hear these cases, not somebody from Sullivan, not somebody from Dutchess. When visiting judges come in, they are coming in, a court of claims judge, which the directive, resolve the case, get rid of it. And then they go back to their county. And I said, that's not right. I will take care of this. We set up a very aggressive plan. I had a tremendous court attorney, John Prizio, which allowed me to be on the bench all the time. I didn't have to get off the bench during the day and research cases. John did it. John gave me the cases. I was on the bench. Within 3 years, our standard and goals was 0. Part of that was I let lawyers know it can't be a popularity kind. Look, everybody wants to be popular. Everybody wants to be loved. I wanted to be respected. And yes, I wanted to be feared, because county court is no playground. County court is not a place to be, it's not a foo-foo court. It's a tough court. The rights of victims, the rights of defendants charged with crimes in a community is on your shoulders. You can't run a county court or any court like that for the purpose of being popular. You can't. You just can't. As a result of that, the attorneys that came into my court prepared were rewarded. I mean, they were complimented in front of the juries, in front of their brethren. Attorneys that came into my court unprepared were not treated well. Now, I told every attorney, assistant DAs, public defenders, defense attorneys, look, I was in front of Frank Vaughn. I never got screamed at as much in my life, not even by my dad, who was a precursor to Navy SEAL as a frogman. But I said, I understand. Things happen. Your wife, your husband, you had a rough night. Your kids kept you up. Come, I'm on the bench every morning, in chamber 7:30. Come and see me. Let me know. I will not bust your chops. But if you come in and play games, if you manipulate, you distort, or you come in unprepared, there's too much at stake for people that are in county court. I'm going to make your life tough. And I did. And as a result of that, I'm sure there are many attorneys that were not fond of appearing in front of me. There are many attorneys that would not appear more than twice. Attorneys that came from the outside, since they didn't know my reputation, I was very good with them. Brought them in chambers, which I didn't have to do, and explained how things worked here. Do not come in my court unprepared. You've got a defendant who's facing a potentially stiff sentence. You've got a victim whose life has been ruined. You've got a community that truly rests upon the decisions that you make. Don't come into my court unprepared. So if you send those messages out, I took some cases in the beginning to send a deterrent. One of them was a young man, gang member, who had been tearing apart the city of Kingston. Automatic weapons. He was in family court. They couldn't do anything with this young man. He was a gang member. He was a blood. It was one of the first cases I tried. I got done with judges school, which candidly was a joke, but you have to go for people that were never judges or not DAs. You've got to learn something. Within 1 week after I got out of judges school, I had my first jury trial. It was set up, I think, the second or third week of January. I made sure I held the prosecutor's feet to the fire more than the defense attorneys, because candidly, I was a former prosecutor. They're supposed to do justice, not get notches on their gun belt. That's not what they're supposed to be do justice. So I made sure that people got eminently fair trials. And always, that young man was convicted, and he got 15 years in state prison.
You know, you've addressed a question that came up early in your administration as judge about a succession of DAs who became judges in this county, and that was more of a pattern than anything else. And of course, there were no Democrats, and
that's also true.
Yeah, and in a public perception, I think, and I can't speak for the public, but people I talk to on my job, the perception was that these Republican prosecutor judges had a bias, a built-in bias from the politics, which Republican tends to be conservative, to their own professional experience. You were apparently aware of that.
Fully aware of it,
and
fully aware of the perception.
Yeah, and then
I really prided myself, Hugh, on. You got to remember, I was endorsed by 4 parties when I was DA, including the Democrats. Independents, conservative, Republican, Democrats.
And you won.
I had a good shot at winning.
You had a good shot.
Up until this most recent election, which we could discuss at some point, which I'm still somewhat confused about, but I had the support of all parties. I was except when I ran for judge the first time, because the governor appointed, when Mike Brune left, who was the county judge, the governor appointed Deborah Schneer to sit as a judge, and I think thinking that nobody would run against her because there was a governor's appointment. I had no intention of. You recruited me to run. I had no intention of running. I was
You're
working.
the guy.
My fault.
It really was the most. My career has been extremely stressful, but so fulfilling. But my plan, I did not run for the third term as DA. I had enough of the politics. DA is supposed to be apolitical. It's so difficult to be apolitical when you're running for office every 4 years. How can you put aside how the community feels about your decisions when every 4 years, every 3 years, you're running again? It's very hard to do. I found that when I felt that political realities were possibly entering into my decisions, I said enough. There were other reasons also, but I said enough. I went into private practice with Dave Clegg, the current DA. And honestly, back at that time, DA had the same salary for 13 years. So it did not even a cost of living increase. It was still good money, but compared to what you can make, I wanted to go out and make some money. I wanted to realize what it was like to go on vacation 3 weeks somewhere a year. Yeah. And I was with Dave when Mike Brune decided to leave early. Mike and I were very close. And Mike knew my career objective was always to be county judge. But I had given it up. Mario came, recruited me, recruited others too. It was a battle. That was a battle within the Republican Party for the nomination. There were highly qualified people. Young Mike Kavanaugh, Marcia Weiss, who's an excellent judge in the town of Ulster, was an assistant DA, Tom Petro. There were excellent people, and that was one hell of a battle to get the nomination. But the simple reality is, Hugh, you've got to, as much as possible, put those politics aside. It's a lot easier to do when you're judge because you're not permitted to go to political events. Yeah. You're not permitted to say anything because of ethics, and you have a position for 10 years. It was 10 years. So for those reasons, judges are more insulated. As far as your question before about adding to the Supreme Court. It's purely a political stunt. And again, I don't care Republican, Democrat. There were some things about Hugh. You may not remember this. I received the Martin Luther King Day Leadership Award as district attorney. That's one of the proudest moments of my life because my rep, as you know, is tough, but it's also fair. The first the horrible gang execution slaying that occurred out by Iwo Jima Lane, there were bloods. A blood, I've forgotten his name, was in jail awaiting trial for a gun possession in front of me. The witness who was going to testify about him, the person in jail conspired with other blood members to have him executed. He was executed. The individual in the jail was only charged with conspiracy. Should have been charged with murder, in my opinion, but I'm not the DA, I was the judge. It came for trial. He looked at me, and he knew the rep, and we met initially with the attorneys outside of the main jury selection room. I wish I could remember his name, but I looked at him, and I said, I can see how you're looking at me, and I don't blame you. And this was all in the record. But I said, I'm going to tell you right now, I'm going to give you a fair trial. I will not allow any shenanigans. I'll protect your constitutional rights as if you are my own son, and that's a promise that you can take to the bank. He still looked at me. We went through the trial. He got a fair trial. Anyone that ever appeared in front of me got a fair trial. He was convicted. I sentenced him. I sentenced him to the max. As he left after the sentence, he looked at me and he goes, I got to tell you, Judge, you promised me a fair trial. I don't like the sentence you gave me. You promised me a fair trial. You gave me that. Later, I had another one of the gang members come to trial, and he repeated the same thing. He said he met up with this guy in a state prison. He goes, I was told by this individual you're going to give a fair trial, and I do. It meant a lot to me. So Republican, conservative, independent, liberal, there were many things that we were very liberal about as DA. And
Liberal?
Absolutely. Liberal. Not progressive. I'm not afraid
No,
to say
I'm not saying
liberal.
progressive either.
We
I'm saying
put
liberal.
programs together. Mike Kavanaugh Sr. and I put programs together that didn't exist outside of New York City. The Sexual Assault Nurse Examiners Unit, that was a unit designed specifically separate from the emergency room. You may have some familiarity with it, Mario, that would examine victims of rape cases in a very, as much as possible, a humane manner rather than waiting online in an emergency room by trained nurses. We did that in Ulster County. The only place it existed was out in Wyoming. That was Mike Kavanaugh that did that. I took that over and expanded it to child abuse victims. We've done things. You were at my retirement as DA. You, in fact, if I recall, remarked on the individual that I had prosecuted as a young assistant, gave him 10 to 20 years for assaulting a gay man and robbing him. Oh, gosh, it's hard to remember the names. He stood up and spoke for me. You were moved by it. Ronnie Wade.
Yeah.
We put together, I was a conservative district attorney in a conservative county. Ronnie Wade came to me. You may remember me. He said, Mr. Williams, I said, yeah, I do, Ronnie. I go, you're coming to see me? And he goes, I want to put together a group that is designed to be a bridge for inmates that pay their dues, get out of prison, and now have to be reassimilated in the community. I've forgotten the name of the group that he put together. I went with Ronnie Wade in front of a conservative Republican legislature asking them to give money to give to Ronnie Wade's program to help inmates who get out of state prison, learn education, get jobs, get assimilated back in the community. That's where the biggest gap in our system exists. I'm sorry, I talk a lot, but touching on areas.
All right. Well, we're here with Don Williams this morning, Kingston Community Radio. We have an open phone line 331-9255. If anyone has a question, of Mr. Williams, Judge Williams. We'd love to hear from you. So let me just throw something out here that's maybe a bigger net, and that is the way things are going right now. It just seems like we're having a significant increase in violent crime.
Locally,
locally,
definitely.
Stabbings and shootings and whatever. So it's never thoroughly reported, but are a lot of these, in your opinion or your experience, a lot of these shootings, what do we have, 5 homicides? Or what, are they drug-related, personal vendettas, just people not being able to live together? What's going on with this?
I cannot speak to the instant cases because I'm not privy to the facts like I would be. I can speak to you about 40 years of seeing this, and they change. The reasons change. The most violent crimes, the homicides that I would see, were typically connected to domestic violence or guns, gangs, and drugs. And that is why I targeted, when I took the bench, all felonies were serious, but I targeted those offenses are the ones that I would send the strongest messages out on. So what I see is typically, not that there are so many guns out there. There are too many guns out there. But the law exists if it's prosecuted aggressively and sentencings are aggressive to send a deterrent to knock it off. And that's why I gave you the example of the guys from the sheriff's office, the jail, playing those tapes back. It was a deterrent. The word was, don't come to Ulster County and sell drugs or bring guns. Now, it still happened, but it was a deterrent. And the cops, defense attorneys, prosecutors would tell me on a regular basis that it was serving as a deterrent. There has to be a fear. But there also has to be, equally or probably more important, Mario, is the fact that there must be education. Violent crime is going to continue to occur until we address the socioeconomic issues. That's the liberal part. Hugh and I believe that. I always believed it. And I tried to do things about it. It's hard. I mean, how? You're a business person. 2 people come and apply for a job. They're equally qualified or close. One has a clean history. One has a criminal history. Who are you going to hire? And if these people that are getting out of prison cannot have some direction, if you put them back in the same environment, they're going to reoffend. Recidivism is going to be high. The violence that occurs now, there's no simple answer. I think a lot of it has to do that there has been, I have to choose these words carefully, there's not enough of a fear anymore. And police, because there are inequities with race in the criminal justice. It's not systemic, I'm sorry. It depends on what your definition of systemic means. But there are inequities that are serious. And at the same point, doing away with law enforcement, reducing law enforcement, what a ridiculous way to try to, what a politically expedient way to do it, to get on that bandwagon.
Sounds good.
Well, it sells great right now. It does. Instead, as I used to go to Jim Childs, and I used to go to Al Costin, Modelli more recently. It used to be the Reverend that was involved in the Raquel Knox case. He's not around. Reverend Hardin. And I would say,
Willie Hardin.
Willie Hardin was a great man, and we worked closely with them. And I used to say, let's get more people from the African American community, the Hispanic community, to become police officers. And 2 things will occur when that happens. Number 1, other cops who may be white will understand more about what it's like to be a black person in this community and how the distrust of law enforcement occurs. The other thing will be, instead of having this horrible distrust of police. For a black person in a community that sees a black man or woman wearing a uniform, get them out and walk the beat again. Get them out to the neighborhood where they talk to young kids and they see these are human beings. And rid, and this is a small percentage, but rid the police departments of those officers that act in bad faith. Get rid of them. That's hard to do. Get rid of them. Hold them accountable. If you do that, right now, as a black person, do you want to be a cop? No, because parts of the black community look at police as the devil. Get rid of that. Teach young people, especially young African American people at an early age, that you have to work with police. They have the last say. So if you do that, combining with holding those bad officers, which is a small percentage, accountable for their bad faith acts, if you do that, then we're going to make some inroads. But it's up to DAs and judges to send a strong message of deterrence. If that message of deterrence is, if you run court or if you run a DA's office to be popular, to be loved by everybody, you're going to fail. You may not fail. The community will.
Speaking of that, I know that you haven't been able to say much about these things, so I want to give you an opportunity. What do you think of George Soros spending the $500,000 to elect a district attorney that he didn't even know?
Well, I have great respect for Dave to begin with. I worked with Dave. He's one of the finest.
He's one of
the finest trial lawyers civilly. In fact, I tried a major arson against him, the Sandborg Cleaners arson, years ago, and he came into court with little experience in county court. Fell at Ulster County Court. Yeah. Did a great job. Great trial lawyer.
And a good human being.
And he's an incredible human being. He really is.
Absolutely. I love him.
I couldn't have imagined working with anyone for that brief period of time in civil practice other than Dave. He was great. Yeah. It's part of the political process that I find distasteful, that some individual that has no connection with this county, who's got a lot of money, can put so much money.
But when Dave came on the radio here, he said that he knew nothing about that.
Yeah,
and he took nothing from that.
And here, by the way,
I did vote for Kavanaugh too. But he said that he had nothing. He never took any money from George Soros.
Well, money was put there, and it's put there underneath.
Right. He says he has no knowledge of it.
Dave is an honest guy, but Dave, to show the type of character Dave is. Dave came here. I asked him to come for an interview with me, and I said, he came thinking this is believed to be a conservative station. He thought he was going to get grilled, and I said, Dave, I'm going to ask tough questions, but I will show you the respect you deserve. And he was quite good, if I recall.
Yeah, he was.
And we had him as well.
Yeah, he's a good guy. Now, young Mike Kavanaugh was really qualified to be DA, and that was a battle. And I think young Mike lost for two reasons, Mario, and you have some knowledge about this too. Number one.
A lot of knowledge.
Yeah, I know. Number one, he lost because of the influx from out-of-county voters who happened to be enrolled as Democrat. They chose to vote here, even though they may just have weekend or summer homes, because their vote counts here, doesn't count in New York City. That's one of the reasons. Yeah. The other reason is because I didn't run. Had I run, Mario, whether I won or lost, Mike Kavanaugh would have won.
All right, let's wrap up with that. In return to that, you're a judge for 10 years. Mm-hmm. By your own assessment, you've been fair, strict, protected your community, treated defendants and prosecutors, attorneys fairly, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You've got a record.
With the attorneys, I treated those that came to my court prepared fairly.
All right.
If you came unprepared, it was not a place.
You're up for re-election.
Yeah.
And what happened? Now you're only. Let me just finish this question. You're only up for a 3-year term because of these age.
People have to understand. I was 66, I believe, at the time. It's mandatory retirement at 70. So even though it was a 10-year period, if I had run, I would only have been able to serve 3 years.
3 years.
Right.
Okay.
Maybe 4. It depends on, when your birth date falls. So there were a whole pile of different reasons. Some of them Mario may know. I will never fully understand.
Well, I can tell you right now.
I'm not sure how much you do know. There was a lot going on at that time. It's a complicated answer.
Well, let me
Suffice it to say that for a week and a half to 2 weeks, I was petitioned by the leaders of the Republican Party, the Independent Party, and the Conservative Party not to run. I was running you.
Yeah.
I had a campaign committee together. I had some reluctance because of the fact I could only serve 3 years. I knew it would be Rounds is a good campaigner.
And had been campaigning for a year. Yeah.
Campaigning for a year that I'm not permitted to do. Plus, it would have cost me a whole lot of money out of my own pocket, assuming I was going to get the support of those 3 parties that had endorsed me forever, repeatedly. I was petitioned not to run. You know me. Mario knows me. Attempting to put pressure on that part of my personality does not succeed. I don't care who you are. So I did not respond well to that at the outset. And no adequate explanation was ever given to me as to why this was happening. And I still, to this day, do not know. I will say this. There were some politics going on, obviously. And 2 days after Dave Clegg announced that he would run for district attorney, those same 3 leaders came back into my chambers after I had told them, okay, I've looked at many different factors, I'll back out. If this is what you're asking me to do, I will back out, and I'll go on with my life. What the thing that convinced me the most about that is when I talked to my daughter. My wife passed at the age of 56. My daughter has struggled with that. I asked my son, my daughter, what do you think, guys? Do I run again? It's going to be a brutal campaign, which I was kind of gearing up for. I like a challenge like that. Some things were being said about me, circulated, that I really was unhappy with. So I was getting geared up. It was like trying a case. But I asked my daughter, and she said, and my wife had passed for a couple of years, and she said, Mom and I think you've done enough. When she said that, I went, oh. So I called the 3 leaders up. I said, okay, you still haven't explained to me why this is happening? I'll back out. They asked me to hold my announcement back for a week. Okay, I want to give some thought to what I'll say to the public, what I'll say to my campaign people. And then it was a Saturday, Dave Clegg announced for district attorney because there was no one that was running at that point, at least announced, from the Democrats. That Monday, Saturday the announcement occurs publicly. That Monday, I started getting visits again from the leaders of the 3 parties, begging me, not begging, but close to it. Oh, they're going to come up with all this money. We want you to run. And I said, and you may know about my alter ego, let me be frank with you. Frank is my alter ego. When Frank comes out, duck. And I told them what they could do with that proposition. Now, it's never been fully explained to me what was going on. I can speculate. I don't like doing that because of the fact that I don't have the full story. And I've moved on now. But it's never been explained to me.
Can you give a little insight there, Chairman? Chortles.
He's in a very difficult position because he's also close to the Rounds family.
Yeah. I mean, I would have run Don's campaign if Brian Rounds wasn't in it because his father-in-law is one of my best friends. So,
and in fact,
it would have been very uncomfortable.
Ask me in a regular, Don, you're doing a great. I'd see you in the parking lot outside of court. Don, you're doing a great job. Let me know. I'll do anything.
No, I mean, it was just a set of circumstances.
Never been explained.
And well, I sometime we'll have a beer and we'll discuss this, but I don't think I can do publicly exactly what happened there, you know. But in any event, let me just say this. We want to thank our guest this morning, Don Williams. We had a wonderful conversation. Thanks so much for coming on and straightening out a few things.
Thank you.
Kingston Community Radio, our guest in the second half is going to be the Alderman at Large from the city of Kingston, Andrea Shaut. And we got some interesting conversations, hopefully, with her. Kingston Community Radio, 331-9255. And make sure you get back here so we can do the birthdays appropriately.
Listening to Kingston Community Radio on WGHQ Kingston. On your radio at 920 AM and 92.5 FM, and also online at mykcr.org.
Question: what will you find on all over-the-counter or OTC medicine packages to help you choose the right drug and use it safely? The answer: the Drug Facts label. This label lists the medicine's active ingredients and purpose, how much to take, and warnings you should know before using it. Remember, even OTC medicines you buy without a prescription can cause side effects you don't want. So follow the information listed on the Drug Facts label. For more information, visit fda.gov/Drug Facts label. A message from the U.S. Food and Drug Administration.
Introducing the YMCA. Sure, you know the Y for a swim or a game of hoops, but we're more than that. We're a cause. When you take a jump shot at the Y, someone else is getting job training. Practice yoga as a team practices her leadership skills. We give people of all ages, incomes, and backgrounds a chance to learn, grow, and thrive. So while you might think of the Y as the place for lifting weights, we're also about lifting entire communities. That's the Y. We're so much more. Visit ymca.net/more.
At St. Jude Children's Research Hospital, we're fighting against childhood cancer every day. At the heart of this battle are our donors.
Most of us want to make some type of difference in the lives of others. St. Jude does miraculous work.
The fact that no one has to pay, it's a place where everyone is treated as an equal.
Everybody is welcome here. And it doesn't matter your religion or what part of the world you're from, all that is taken away. It just gives you some hope.
It's just a nice feeling to put your energy into something that really does genuinely make a difference in a child's life.
There's just no greater gift. If we have the ability to help, then we have a responsibility to help.
Finding cures, saving children. St. Jude Children's Research Hospital. Find out how you can help at stjude.org.
Central Hudson reminds you, when it comes to your home's wiring, safety matters. Overheated electric cords or outlets are signs of inadequate wiring, within your wall, in an appliance, or both. Circuit breakers or fuses that trip often is usually a sign that a circuit is overloaded, an appliance is faulty, or something is wrong that can shock a person or cause a fire. Have a trained electrician troubleshoot such problems immediately.
Hi, this is Tony Marmo from Norman Staffing, and we've been bringing together employers and job seekers since 1980. If you're an employer and have job vacancies, let Norman Staffing help fill them with permanent or temporary workers. We screen, interview, and recommend the best candidates for your company. We make the employment process easier and faster for you. Please call Norman Staffing for your employment needs at 338-9111, 338-9111, or normanstaffing.com.
Hi, this is Winnie from the Rosendale Seniors, and I support Kingston Community Radio, and so should you.
Rondout Savings Bank has a long history of serving local communities and maintaining a strong tradition of customer service excellence while providing each customer with the personal attention they deserve. Rondout Savings' approach to community banking puts you and the growth of your business in the front of everything they do. They're a different kind of bank and would like to tell you why, so please reach out to one of their expert business bankers for an appointment and let them show you what they can do for you. Rondout Savings Bank, always working for you and the community with branches in Kingston, West Hurley, and Hyde Park. Also online at rondoutbank.com. Equal housing lender, member FDIC.
All right, good morning, Kingston Community Radio. Good morning, Kingston Community. We're here with Andrea Shaut. Is it Shaut?
Shaut.
Shaut. Andrea Shaut, the Alderman at Large for the City of Kingston Common Council. We're really pleased to have Andrea join us this morning. So our call-in number is 331-9255. If you have any questions about the city and city business, give us a call because we have someone here who can answer your questions most likely. She can. Anyway, but before we get started, let's do our birthdays. You know, as a tradition, at the 8 o'clock hour, we start with our happy birthday wishes. So today, Friday the 16th, we have a couple of entries. So please wish a happy birthday today, April 16th, to Elaine Baum from your friends at the Hurley Pearlers. And we have a second birthday today, the morning crew. Okay, please wish a wonderful happy birthday to Linda Rosna from Mom, Phyllis, and Sister Rhonda, family and friends. And the winner of the Boyce Dairy Milk House famous cow pie for today is Elaine Baum. And that comes to Elaine courtesy of the Boyce Dairy Milk House and Kingston Community Radio. Congratulations, Elaine. Have a wonderful, wonderful birthday. Now, tomorrow, which is Saturday, and we don't have a show, so we're going to do tomorrow's as well. Please wish Grace Milano a happy birthday on April 17th. And Jared Milano a happy birthday on April 18th. They are brother and sister born one day apart, hopefully in different years. Thank you very much and have a nice day. And that is from Patricia and Charlie Warden. And on April 17th, our winner of the Boyce Dairy Milk House famous cow pie is Grace Milano. Congratulations, Grace. And you can pick up your famous cow pie at the Boyce Dairy Milk House on 62 O'Neill Street in Kingston. I think, okay, here we go. And then on Sunday, we have the aforementioned Jared Milano, as well as please wish a happy birthday this Sunday to Elizabeth Finger from your friends and family. And additionally, evidently Sunday's a busy day, April 18th. Please wish a happy birthday to Richard Joyce from your friends at the Wellness and Healthy Lifestyle Club. And Richard, we're about to compromise your wellness and health by making you the winner of the famous cow pie for Sunday, the 18th. You can pick that up at the Boyce Dairy Milk House on 62 O'Neill Street. That comes to you courtesy of Kingston Community Radio and the Boyce Dairy Milk House. Thank you so much. Our friends at Boyce are always extremely generous, and thanks for calling in those birthdays. And happy birthday to all. And now, let us get to our guest who's presented with some really tempting banana bread. Thanks so much, Andrea. And good morning.
Good morning. Happy to be here.
Yeah. Well, listen, we're thrilled to have you. So And originally, when we contacted you, we wanted to talk about the rezoning situation with the city of Kingston. So, can you just let's fill in the audience kind of what's going on and what the intention of the rezoning proposal is, what you're hoping to accomplish with that, and why there was a need for a rezoning? I think most people don't have any clue as to what's going on there.
Yeah, and you could just kick me under the table if I get a little too nerdy with all of this stuff, but just some history behind that. Is our city's zoning code has not been changed since the 60s. So we are currently operating with a code from the 60s. Okay. So there are so many problems with our code that the council developers, residents all hit on constantly.
Could you speak to just a few of the problems with the code?
Sure.
Andrea, please.
Yeah, there are places in the code that states different things that are different, that are contradictory things. So when you are trying to develop something here and going through the code and following it, and whatever the zoning or the planning board decides or the council decides, and if it passes through, you could look at another part of the code and say, well, that's not allowed. And that's where we get a lot of litigation issues. So you saw that in the Kingstonian, you saw that in the Irish Culture Center, all these, those are just a couple examples of litigation issues that, because it's not clear. The zoning code is not written in a way that makes sense, and definitely doesn't make sense to me, and it definitely would not make sense to anybody who's not at all involved in just trying to develop anything. So then you just get all the developers that have the money to be able to say, well, if this will eventually go to a lawsuit, I could afford it. You're not going to get smaller people who want to develop anything because it's just unclear. So about a year ago, the mayor started the zoning task force, which was a group of citizens, and I can't remember how many, I think it was between 6 and 10, that applied, and the mayor chose them, and they worked for a year developing an idea of what they were looking for, and then they put out the RFP. They had interviews, and they selected Dover Coal and brought that to the council as the company that would work towards us getting a form-based code.
Did they put that out to bid?
They did.
Okay. Go ahead.
And this was all a year ago, right before the pandemic. So it was brought to the Common Council. The Finance Committee approved of it back in, I believe it was last March. It was March because it was right before we shut down. And then we decided to table it because it is expensive. It's $500,000. It is not a cheap initiative, and we had no idea what we were all going to be walking into and how we were going to get through this pandemic. So we decided smartly, I think the council decided smartly, to hold off to see how we would fare. We have been really lucky, the municipality as a whole, financially, that we have not suffered as much as we thought we were going to. So I brought this back after talking with a bunch of city staff, hearing from constituents, and definitely folks from the zoning task force who wanted to bring this back after a year of being tabled. So we've talked about it for a couple committee meetings, and the council recently decided to move forward with hiring Dover Coal.
What does the $500,000 buy?
The consultants will be here, so the Dover Coal, that are consultants who we just now hired, they're going to spend 12 to 18 months working on this. So it doesn't actually give us the zoning code. What it will do, a new zoning code, what it will do is give us a framework, and this is what they recommend, and then it will still be up to the council. So this doesn't, and this is one of the arguments against it, is it still doesn't get us a zoning code.
For $500,000, you still don't have a zoning code.
Yeah, because we never know. I mean, it's going to be a year away at least. That means it could potentially be a new council. So, we don't know. But when you have a big initiative like this, you don't want to rush the process, So we don't know what will happen in 12 to 18 months.
So this will not be a rezoning, but it'll be a redoing of the zoning code, correct?
Yes.
They won't be recommending that this parcel be rezoned to that or anything of that nature, or will they be doing that as well?
Yeah, they're going to give us a comprehensive recommendation for the city for our zoning code.
The city, unless it's changed, has about 8,800 parcels, of which about 8,000 are residential. And I think the majority of those are R1. The 63 zoning code, I think, was designed to encourage single-family development, building of houses. So it's saying that the segment of the population that will be most affected by this will be residential as opposed to business.
Yeah, I mean, the idea of what this consultant is going to be doing, at least in the beginning, first they're going to really do a dig deeply into Kingston, and then they're going to be coming to the public and each neighborhood. So the idea is you want to kind of understand what each neighborhood wants and hopefully get as much public feedback as possible in this process, which,
You'll get the feedback, especially if they don't like it.
You always get that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm hoping, though, and this is the optimism in me, is that we get folks at the table, so to speak, because it may be virtual table, but depending on what the next few months are going to be. But I think people have more in common than they realize, and I think we want a lot of the similar things in this community, and the hard thing is getting folks to talk. So I'm hoping through this process that Dover Coal, who has done this before, will help us get to that point. But I also know that, especially as an elected official, it's our responsibility to help them with that. So
who developed the request for proposal so that, because it sounds like it's a fairly sophisticated situation, and the proposal itself would have been pretty complex. If somebody said to me, develop this request for proposal for doing this zoning thing, I wouldn't have even known where to start. So did you have some assistance with that, or was it somebody?
That was the zoning task force that worked on that.
They're all laymen, right? I mean, they're not zoning people.
No, they're not experts.
Says,
I mean, you do have, like, Tony Arkalevitz was on it, who's, chair of the ZBA. But, yeah, they're citizens who applied and the mayor appointed.
Was there, Andrea, was there any discussion or consideration, perhaps within this committee, of doing it a different way rather than to call in a consultant from Florida, I think, where this company is headquartered? I was thinking the county planning department has some pretty sophisticated hardware up there, and they get involved in zoning, as you know. If it's within 500 feet of the city line, they recommend. Was that considered? A lot of people are stuck on this $500,000, which even with all this federal cash flowing in, we'll get to that subject in a moment. But this is a lot of money to be spent on a study, basically.
Yeah, but I think the long-term effects of it, we keep throwing Band-Aids on problems, and that's not working. And, I was explaining to somebody, it's one of my favorite topics is shoes. And if you can afford the nice pair of leather shoes custom made in Italy, they're going to last a lot longer than the shoes from Payless. And just for the record, my budget is more closer to Payless than the nice Italian shoes. But, I think you have to see this as a long-term solution and an investment, exactly. That, yes, $500,000 is a lot of money for a study, but I trust.
So the goal of the ultimate goal of this rezoning, is it to make development, which oftentimes in Kingston is not a dirty word, quite frankly.
Right.
To make development easier?
That's not my goal. I mean, I guess I don't know the other council members and the voting council members what their goal was. I know that was something that we talked about, and I think that's something that makes it is important, but I think it's to make things more clear. That's and that helps with developers, but it also helps with us here, is to make it the clarity of our zoning code, I think, is important, which is part of that.
Okay.
Yeah, I think.
Well, you went through this in the town of Ulster when you were.
I was on the town of Ulster did not have zoning.
Right.
I was on the commission there that established zoning in the town of Ulster, and it was a nightmare because no one virtually was happy with what they were getting zoned as. Now, Mr. Reynolds lives in the city of Kingston, as you're aware. Yeah.
She's my former
He wants to
alderman.
be rezoned for skyscraper. All right, so he would like to build another 6 stories on his house.
I hope Mr. Reynolds comes to all these public meetings with Dover Coal and expresses his desires.
And he would
Is there a lot of spot zoning in Kingston, so-called, which is illegal but somehow gets done?
I mean, I don't know if I could answer that completely accurately. I mean, I hear that that's potentially spot zoning, but I don't know,
So let me ask a follow-up question, because you mentioned the Kingstonian as having had some different aspects to the zoning law that changed that situation or made it more difficult. What is the status of the Kingstonian? We would be very interested, and I think the public would be very interested to know, how that is proceeding, and if one of the things I'm wondering is there actually a need for this upscale housing in the city of Kingston? Because what I hear is every time I pick up the newspaper is somebody wants to build workforce, senior, assisted. I never hear anybody say, let's build some really nice housing here so we can keep wealthy folks in the city of Kingston.
I mean, we definitely need housing. We have a severe shortage of housing. I think we need workforce housing, affordable housing. So many people are moving out of Kingston because they cannot afford it. I have heard some people say that they want the higher end housing because they want to downsize, but that's not the majority that I'm hearing. But in terms, kind of going back to your first question about where the Kingstonian is, and with the council, I don't remember exactly which meeting. It was probably 2 months ago. The last thing that the Common Council did was transfer the property of the parking lot to the KLDC, to the Kingston Land
Trust.
Development.
Okay.
Yeah. I know that this is now on their table and deciding what to do. I have not been following closely with their process, but I know they do have a process to go through in order to give the property or sell the property to the Kingstonian. So I think that's where they are now. So right now there's nothing on the Common Council's plate in regards to Kingstonian.
Okay. Do you ever notice that the same people seem to be opposed to everything? Right? So my thing is I've been involved in politics for a long time. So when people when people came, I was on the county legislature for a while. I was Republican chairman for a while. When people came to me and, well, I'm opposed to this, I would always say to them, tell me something you supported. I just need to know where your mind is. So tell me a project that you supported. Because if folks don't have anything that they can support, and they have a bunch of things that they're always against, I have a problem with their credibility. Would you not?
Sure, I'll agree with you. Andrea's silent on this particular subject.
She's taking a pass on this one, I understand. But my thing is this. Look, I don't know very much about it. But what I do know is that there always seem to be people that are against everything. And they make the most noise. And I think in fairness to the folks who are making this investment, at least they should have a fair hearing and a fair chance to do this project. I mean, when I talk to restaurateurs and business people in Uptown Kingston, I know many of them. They can't wait to have those apartments filled with people who are going to be going out to dinner 5 nights a week and buying stuff, and it just, the economy, it's such an uplifting thing. And again, I have nothing against workforce and affordable housing, and I think we need that right now because people are getting priced. I mean, I can't believe what kind of numbers are being tossed around for houses in the city of Kingston. But, and I think the rents are increasing dramatically, and I'm totally for taking that jail, for instance, and making it into something, or Rupco seems to always do a very nice job with their housing. But I think you have to have balance. The community should be open to everybody. Whether you're wealthy or you're not, we should be able to have a community that embraces everyone.
Well, this is what is it 10% of the Kingstonians? I think that was negotiated with the developers. Has what they call workforce housing.
I believe that's the percentage. It's been a while, so I believe
it's small, but it's a concession.
I think it's 14 apartments.
Yeah, it's a concession to critics.
If I may, because I'm the radical here, I think that is the dumbest damn thing in the world. Why would you take when there are opportunities to build workforce housing, why would you take a project that's an upscale project and demand that some of those apartments be, because here's what you're doing, okay, when you do that, you're charging the other people more money to pay for they're supplementing the cost of those apartments. And I don't think that's fair to the folks on the top floor.
You cannot let this stand, Andrea.
I was going to say, I respectfully disagree with that one.
This is her wheelhouse. Here we go.
Well, I mean, that's just saying, okay, well, so we should have an affordable housing project just only in this part, and keep that all one spot instead of diversifying and letting...
They could build it next door. I don't really care. What I'm saying is it's not fair to the tenants that are going into that housing to have 8 or 10% of those projects they're going to be paying less money than they're paying.
But the tenants will know what they're getting themselves into, and if they think it's that unfair, then they don't have to agree to sign the lease.
Okay. That's fair enough.
So there. Do we talk about Project Bucks or Snug yet?
We have not.
Well, let's talk about Snug. This is the second. Listen, we're getting two points. Let's snuggle up. We're getting 2 points.
Let me just make my traditional announcement. Good morning, folks. We're here with Andrea Shaut, the Common Council president, and we're discussing a wide variety of issues. We're Kingston Community Radio, 331-9255. This lady is very knowledgeable, and she can take just about any question that you've got out there. So let's call in if you have an issue, you have a question, you have anything you want to know about what's going on in city government. We have the answers for you. 331-9255.
Thank you, Mario.
And we have a call. See, all you have to do is ask, and calls come in. Good morning, caller. You're with Andrea.
Mario Len Bernardo here. Hey, I really find this Kingstonian question and answer about affordable housing, workforce housing, luxury housing is very interesting. There is a great model that was, I guess, developed somewhere in the 80s and 90s in Manhattan, and it was called the Mitchell-Lama housing, where you could have apartments that ranged from workforce to luxury. And it works well, and because one of your, I guess, Mary, one of your feelings is, it's an inequity to have someone paying higher prices for and unlike not having for the workforce housing. So what this Mitchell-Lama program did was come up with money, so all the apartments at the end of the day were worth the same. The maintenance was the same. The contribution of money back to the state, to the town, or whatever, in this situation, the city, was based on income, like a tax or a fee. So if you made $100,000 or more, you would pay a fee back to the Mitchell-Lama programming that was going on in the other areas of the city. So I think what lacks sometimes is creativity and how these projects are viewed. This way the developer is made whole and the people in the community are getting what they want in housing for people. And I think that's something that should be really addressed and looked at. Mario, I do tend to agree with you that you don't want inequity of cost solely lie on the people of the luxury. So that's something that should be brought up and worked with the city, state, and see how it works out, because there are models that work specifically for developers.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, that was, my comments really were trying to establish some sort of fairness here to everyone involved. So what you're saying is, I do remember the Mitchell-Lama housing in the city of New York, and the apartments that were workforce apartments were supplemented. The rents were supplemented by the government to make everybody whole and not penalize the other tenants. And I think, maybe something, I don't know, maybe there is a program of that nature available someplace. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'm not sure, and I've never heard of that particular program.
Well, we applaud Rutgers, and that's basically done the same way.
Old coots remember this. Yeah. I'm sorry. What could you repeat that, the caller?
Well, we applaud Rupco, and sometimes those programs work the same exact way with a different name.
Right.
So,
Okay.
For example, we have to give the ability, like we give it to Rupco, we have to give it the ability to private developers.
Okay. Well, thank you for that call. That was a great piece of history and information.
I'll talk to you later. You have a great day.
All right. Thank you very much. I guess we have another caller. All right. Good morning, caller. Yes. Good morning, caller.
Yes. Good morning. Great show this morning. And welcome to Alderman at Large. I'm so glad that she's here. My question is, with the traffic circle project, can you give an update on that? And has this issue with zoning and things that come up, has that in any way hindered this project, or is the project on track?
As far as I know, the project is on track to finish, to be completed in the end of the summer. I actually recently asked, and so far so good. So I'm hopeful. You could actually almost start to see a circle out there. The zoning has not impacted that project at all. The traffic circle is a city or state project, so the zoning hasn't had any effect at all.
Great, thank you.
Yep, so fingers crossed we'll get there.
Great.
There's good government for you. Keep your fingers crossed.
Well,
Anything could happen, but so far so good.
we're
so.
going to keep Andrea's fingers crossed because she is the government, and the rest of us are just going to hope for the best, you know. But yeah, by the way, I think that's a terrific place for a circle, a traffic circle. You know, that was a nightmare getting through that intersection and making lefts and rights and things. The one out at the thruway, I think, works pretty well. Once they cut the speed down and
smaller.
I don't see the number of accidents out there that I used to see.
You know, Andrea, that's like so many things before your time. Boy, are we dating ourselves. I've told a story on this program before about how confusing the present, since the thruway was built, that intersection. That was kind of a hybrid. They had to connect Kingston to the thruway.
Colonel Chandler Drive.
Colonel Chandler Drive, which I believe is the shortest interstate in the country.
That is.
You know, we're very proud of that. But there was a fatal accident on that some time ago now. A businessman came to Kingston on some business and whatever, and he stayed at the Governor Clinton Hotel right down the street, and he was from out of town. And I guess he stopped for a few drinks after his business, quite a few drinks. And then he got back on the road and he headed for the thruway. And he turned into the oncoming lane of Chandler Drive. Remember that? Yeah. And a young woman was coming home from work. It was around 5 o'clock at night. She was coming home from work, and he slammed into her head on and killed her. So it was a fatal accident, and he was charged with drunk driving. He was pretty drunk, and it went to trial. And the jury, the defense attorney argued successfully that that signage was so confusing that even a sober person could easily make that mistake, and the guy got off. So that's how bad it was.
Is that before the circle then? Is that?
No, then many years before.
It was before the thruway traffic circle, though.
Oh yeah, it was coming into Kingston.
Right. Yeah, that's what I meant. That circle. Yeah.
So that's like so many things around town. It was long overdue for a.
I know you have an interest in the SNUG program.
Yeah, SNUG is guns spelled
backwards.
Yes. So I thought it was just another mindless acronym, but it's actually guns. However, and we had this discussion with the former judge, Don Williams, who was on before you, Andrea. This is Rita Worthington's proposal to spend $20,000 to get guns.
Kind of kick off the program.
Yeah. Andrea, what do you, as Alderman at Large, what do you know about this proposal, and what do you think of it?
The proposal of SNUG itself, or the $20,000 startup, or yes,
the whole
yes.
thing. Yeah.
I actually don't have a lot of information on the program itself, so I can't go into details. I know that, we're all really troubled about the violence that's been going on for the past year and a half, and so we've been trying to come up with ways that we could help, and Alderwoman Rita Worthington has been spearheading this with other community leaders to get this program running in Kingston. So the ask of $20,000 would be a small amount. The program itself would cost a lot more, but this is just kind of our way of saying, city government supports any way that we could help curb the violence that's been wrecking our
There was
community.
a letter sent out, I think, by 8 of 9 older members, council members, to the mayor about a month ago to do something about the gun violence. Did you hear anything from the mayor on that?
He did reach out to us. It was 8 out of 10 of us because I was
That's you the 10th. Yeah.
on the 10th. He did reach out to us, and we have been talking immediately after, although that was, like you said, about a month ago, maybe 6 weeks.
Yeah.
And so it's been about a month since anything actually happened. But, you know, he's supportive of this program. So, you know, I think we're partnering together and trying to work together a little bit more.
Okay. This program apparently emanates from Chicago. Do you consider Chicago a role model for controlling gun violence?
Well, they've also done it in Poughkeepsie, and
Again, do you consider Poughkeepsie a role model?
no, not necessarily a role model, but I mean, you go to, I don't know, pick a town that doesn't have gun violence, they're not going to have these programs, right? Or actually, maybe they would. I don't know. But you know, we're looking at communities that are facing the same issues that we're facing, and looking at programs that have been successful. So,
Do you think going door to door, civilians, as it were, unarmed, knocking on doors and saying, "Do you have any guns?" is practical?
I lean towards no.
Okay. I will not volunteer for that job.
I think the problem.
Yeah, I would be somebody who would volunteer for that.
I'd be afraid.
And then,
You're knocking on some doors and asking for guns.
You can get your body armor. But I think the problem here is just a lack of specifics. So it's announced that you're going to spend $20,000. One of the older people suggested that we don't have enough information. It doesn't appear, at least, you know, I mean, that newspaper seldom gets the coverage correct anyway, but it just doesn't.
It's my alma mater.
So I could actually, Alderwoman Worthington sent it as a late communication, which I very rarely accept late communications because I believe getting through the process, having it out there, the more transparent, obviously, the better for everybody.
Sure.
However, after talking with the chair of finance, we both decided that we will accept this one as late communication to start the conversation. And it was my suggestion at the committee meeting last week when, you know, because you're right, we do need more information, the public needs more information, that we could move forward with this while Rita is working hard over the next few weeks to get us all of that information, getting the public all that information. And then if we don't have that information, the council doesn't either tables it for another month.
Oh, okay. So this was only this is only reported out of committee.
This is only reported out of committee.
Okay, so you haven't spent the 20 grand yet.
Actually, still in committee.
With the expectation that we will have a lot more information to vote. If we don't have that information, we table it. But at least this gets the ball rolling in case we do have that information, because if this is the program that we want and we see the value in, we should move forward with it.
Well, as a town of Ulster resident, I just want you to know that I am concerned about that $20,000 because I contribute significantly through parking tickets. And so I have an investment in the city of Kingston. So I got a parking ticket going to church.
Would you say that older woman Worthington went off half cocked in this respect?
No, no, you got to start the ball someplace, and I think what Andrea's saying is appropriate.
The other thing, just to add also, is, you know, we could be having these conversations amongst one or two of us, but I see the value of having them in committee, because then it's reported, and then the public could weigh in, and you could call your alder person and weigh in on this.
We weren't weighing in with you.
You could weigh in with me, although I have no vote. But hopefully, I still have somewhat of a voice.
Yeah,
but,
exactly.
But so that's my philosophy. Is I'd rather get that information out. But I do know that folks don't always trust government. I don't always trust government. So when you have it on the table, and
You're talking about county government. You trust
Sure.
city government.
Oh, of
Okay.
course. Yeah.
Segueing to county government, I'm kind of curious about your classmate, Ryan. It's interesting. I think it's pretty impressive, actually, to have three people in the same Kingston High School. What year was it? 2000.
2000.
Yeah, the centennial class of Kingston High School has three public officials, fairly high ranking. You've got Andrea is the alderman at large, not in any particular order. Let's go with the executive, Pat Ryan, the mayor, and
As they say with wine, 2000 was a very good year.
Good year. Anyway, we really don't get into these kind of back and forth brouhahas, but I think there is a significant issue here. The legislature. Did you have to check?
I did read that article. Yeah.
For listeners, the county legislature voted 20-3 at its most recent meeting to ask, or perhaps even require the county executive to give them the same type of information that he gets from his department heads, usually during the summertime, as he prepares his budget to them, so they can be acting as it were in real time with real information. There's an interesting precedent to this. I happened to attend one of the first meetings that Mike Hine had with the legislature. It wasn't closed door. It was Fred Wadnola was the chairman, and this subject came up. And this was a new government, a new executive. Ryan's got a little experience now, but he was brand new. He had been in office that month in January of 2009. And the question that Wadnola raised at this meeting with reporters sitting around, we would like the same thing that this legislature 11 years later is asking for. And Mike Hine looks and says, no way, you're not getting that information. You could ask for it, but you're not getting it. What you will get is my budget. And when I deliver my budget to you in late October or early October, then you can ask all the questions you want. Is there a parallel here, Andrea, with the Common Council, which seems to be, to use it delicately, at odds at times with the mayor? But that's a normal tension between legislatures and executive branches, which our system is designed for that. Is this something that the Common Council would consider that they want, or?
When I read that, it was very interesting to me. And I don't know all the information. I have not followed, except I read the article last night. But the city does the same thing. Is the department heads work with, they come up with a budget, then they present it to the mayor and the comptroller, and then they work it through. Then the mayor presents the budget, and then we start working on it. So we often don't know what the department head's original ask and what they really feel like they need is. And, I don't know if this is the same thing with the county, but, a lot of our department heads work at the pleasure of the mayor here. So when they come and talk to us, we don't know if they're just been told that they have to say this is the budget they want and what they really need to make their department successful, and how much liberty they have at our table. So I'm going to be following this because this is very interesting.
Okay. Speaking of finance, there's something like $18 million in federal stimulus money headed for Kingston.
Yes, I've heard that rumor. Yes.
Hughie would like his street paved with gold, please. Can we do gold sidewalks?
Gold, yeah. People have
He's got a nicely paved.
It was nicely paved about 10 years ago, and it won't be paved again for another 20 years. There's got to be wish lists floating around. I mean, what kind of department head with his or her salt doesn't have 10 things that they can't get or were denied?
Right.
An alderman at large wouldn't have projects.
That's right. What about the alderman at large? Do you have a wish list? Priority, I should say.
I do. I have an idea. The last maybe 6-9 months, I have been talking a lot, which surprises me. but about sewers.
Oh.
I think that our sewer infrastructure, actually I don't think, I know our sewer infrastructure is failing. It is old, and I think at least part of this money should go towards helping homeowners with their sewer laterals. So right now in the city, the sewer laterals are the responsibility of the homeowners. When it fails, that's like $10,000, $12,000.
Big deal.
And there's a lot of folks in Kingston that don't have that money lying around. So then when you can't fix your lateral, and then you get a sinkhole in the street, and then it's a public safety issue, but the homeowners can't afford to drop $10,000 because realistically, most of our residents don't have that money to be able to drop. I mean, that's painful for a lot of us. So I would like to have some kind of program that could help with that.
Maybe you could have some type of a commission that can decide and help homeowners based upon their income. So, right?
That's exactly what I've been thinking.
Yeah. So, someone with very little income, living on Social Security,
Like me.
like you, we pay the entire $12,000, and maybe someone
Who's rich like you.
uptown who just bought a house for $500,000 and whatever
Sliding scale type of thing.
can pay for it or whatever, but have some sort of a fairness, a commission or some group.
That's exactly what I've.
But I think it's, and you'd allocate that money, put it in a fund.
Would you like to head the project?
He's not a city resident.
I'll just do parking tickets. Okay, I want to be on the parking commission.
Hey, just circling back for a second, it just occurred to me the new roundabout at Albany Avenue. How far up Broadway does that? It seems like it's headed for rundown.
How far
up Broadway does that?
Which actual project? The streetscape, or the?
Well, I know the streetscape, at least by design, is in place,
Right.
and they've done a lot of stuff. No, I mean you were talking about sewers. If they're digging up Broadway, they're going to find monsters down there.
They already have.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, geez, I don't know. Maybe I'm probably messing up my months, but maybe 6 months ago, the engineer department came to us because they were doing work under Broadway and realized that the sewers were failing.
Yeah.
Which is something that I asked about when we brought when the streetscape started 2 years ago when I was representing Ward 9, and everything seemed to be okay, but then it wasn't okay. So we actually are currently, the work that you're probably seeing now on Broadway is the sewers. And we had to do it.
Sure.
Had no choice. But, this is going to be issues on all the infrastructure problems. So we're going to dig up the streets and do all the work on the top. But what are we going to? We're going to do all the work.
Well,
on
they used to
top?
just pave over it, bury it. Let somebody else worry
The
about
sewers
it.
aren't sexy. So that is my campaign: is to make sewers sexy again.
We won't go there.
I guess I can't say again, right? Because I don't know if sewers are
never
sexy.
sexy. People don't vote for sewers. They just
No, but what's not sexy is when the sewers, collapse, and we all have issues.
I think we can get Art Carney here. From the old honeymooners, worked in the sewers, and he made them sexy. But I have one other. I drive on Greenkill frequently. So you already know what I'm going to ask you about that. That from the Five Corners to what's
probably Clinton Avenue.
No. From Five Corners to
Yeah.
What's the side street there that goes to Benny? Yeah.
Wilbur Avenue.
Yeah, Wilbur. From that.
You should have known
that. That is so confusing. In particular, to people who are going towards Uptown, coming off of Wilbur and making a left turn, you are virtually on the sidewalk.
Yeah.
There's this narrow little lane that takes you up there.
They took a boulevard and turned it into a one-lane road, at least in one direction.
Oh, my God. And people have to park out in the street. I mean, they're parked.
Yeah, they're parked in the middle of the street. Who designed this thing?
Is there a
No, did you design this thing?
I definitely did not.
Engineering malpractice here or something?
Yeah.
So I usually, hopefully you've noticed, I usually don't hold back, and I'm pretty honest. But we were advised by Corporation Counsel to not discuss the safety issue.
Well, you got a major lawsuit for the man who was killed.
Yeah, exactly. So
And you're going to have others if they don't fix that. Seriously. I mean, I almost missed a turn and went in the wrong lane the other day. And at night, there's no way you can
Yeah, the
use it at
lighting.
night. And if there's a little snow on the ground, you can't see all the lines.
So fixing it would be almost an admission of guilt. So you're not, I'm just speculating here, but nobody's going to fix that thing, to quote Mario, until, and the courts grind on for years.
Right.
So we're going to be stuck with this thing?
I just hope that as we work on new projects, especially with Broadway, that, lessons are learned and we have better education moving into some of these new roads. But yeah, unfortunately, I've been advised not to talk.
Jesus.
Fair enough.
We used to say in journalism, if lawyers ran the newspaper, we'd never get an edition out.
Well, lawyers, unfortunately, have a lot to say about government. And, but I think that's fair. I think that's a fair statement. The only thing I would say as someone who drives that road, and I used as an automobile repair shop, and there's a bakery there that's a fabulous bakery, and so I'm on that street all the time. I hate to say it, either I have a car trouble or a sweet tooth. One or
they're
the
right
other.
next door to
So
each other.
I alternate, sometimes I do both. I drop the car off and then walk next door to the bakery and get myself a cheese Danish. But there's some there's a liquor store there, there's a Stewart's there, a lot of and there's a pizza place there, a restaurant. There's a lot of activity in that small little area. I would hope that at some point in time that could be redesigned to.
She can't comment, Mary.
I know that. I'm
you
suggesting for the future that she seems to be alderman at large, Shaut, seems to be very, very attuned. All right, we have one phone call, and we're gonna have to turn that up. All right. Good morning, caller. You're with Alderman at Large, Shaut.
Hey, good morning. Can you hear me?
Sorry.
Yeah, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Great. Let me turn down my radio. Hey, good morning. It's Tyson, and just wanted to respond to the nightmare of that intersection. I live a couple blocks away, and it is really hazardous and a liability. Just to chime in as a Kingstonian, that something's got to be done about it. I understand the legal ramifications of not being able to discuss it, but it's theater of the absurd every time you go through that intersection. So on Greenkill, and just another thing is I've been petitioning my alderman to put some speed humps on the block between Linderman and Wall, and it really is like a Formula One speedway. And it's been a year since all of our neighbors signed a petition to just do something about people speeding on that street. Do you guys have any input and feedback regarding that?
Hey, what's the notion of taking down so many traffic lights and replacing them with stop signs? What was the thinking? What's the thinking behind that?
There was actually a study done by the county to see if the stoplights were warranted, and not a single one of them was warranted to be there.
Well, what Noble actually said back in November when we had him on for the Happy Christmas Fund was each stop intersection was going to cost $300,000 to fix, so they implemented stop signs instead. That's what he had mentioned on the radio.
$29 a piece. Yeah.
He's actually on this Tuesday with Cam and Nina at 7:30.
Okay.
Yeah, I heard that same information, and that kind of makes sense. But yeah.
Yeah, as in terms of the speeding, I mean, that was probably my number one concern when I was on the council for Ward 9 that I heard from constituents is speeding issues throughout the city. So it's not just one area. There's a lot of issues. In terms of speed humps, there are consequences to the speed humps. So the council and DPW have not been very it would take a lot of convincing for us to put out some speed humps, but there are other ways. You can feel free to email me, and I'm happy to talk to you about more specific ways. It's shaut@kingston-ny.gov, but you could find me on the city website too.
Got it.
I
definitely will be in touch, and some of my other neighbors might be in touch. I hope you don't get inundated with emails regarding this issue.
I can't promise solutions, but I'll definitely do my best to try.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it, and thank you guys for everything. I'm going to hang up. Thank you.
All right, great. Thank you for the call, and have a wonderful day. So we're down to our last minute. Is there anything else, Andrea, that you would like to say to the listening audience about city government, where we're going, what your hopes, aspirations are, anything?
You can just reach out to us, your alderman or me. I think we try to listen. If we don't know a problem exists, we can't work on finding the solutions.
Give your contact information again.
Sure. If you would like to email me, it's Shaut, so ASHAUT @kingston-ny.gov. You also find it on the city's website.
Wonderful.
You can email me with any issues.
Well, thank you so much for joining us this morning and your candid answers. It's very refreshing to see a politician that really tells it like it is. Thanks so much.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
And for great songs and magic memories, 920 WGHQ AM Kingston and 92.5 WT.